Picture this, a 5-hour flight. A grown man, wedged into a middle seat, sandwiched between two strangers, unable to move an inch. He calls his son afterward, furious, humiliated. And on the other end of that call? Laughter. Real, genuine, can't catch your breath laughter. Because that man spent 40 years making sure his own son never got a moment's comfort. This is the story of a man who inherited a broken empire, cleaned up 4 decades of wreckage his father left behind, and then, when he finally had the chance, chose a middle seat as his quiet, perfect answer dot. If you've ever been underestimated by the one person who was supposed to protect you, if you know what it feels like to do everything right while someone else does everything wrong and still expects a seat at your table, this story is for you. Stick around, because this one builds slowly, and the payoff is worth every second. Like this video, subscribe if you want more stories like it, and let's get into it. Let's call him Daniel. Growing up, Daniel didn't have a father in any real sense. His parents split when he was young, and from there, life became a rotation of temporary addresses. His mom's apartment, a relative's spare room, wherever they could land that month. Child support never came. Not because his father couldn't afford it, because his father chose not to send it. Meanwhile, across the country, that same father was living a different life entirely. The heir apparent to a family business built by Daniel's grandparents, a legacy company with real money behind it, or at least the appearance of real money. Daniel didn't see any of that. He saw eviction notices. He saw his mother crying quietly in the kitchen after another missed payment. He grew up fast, out of necessity, not choice. By his 30s, something in Daniel shifted. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the stubborn, aching hope that so many children of absent parents carry. The hope that if they just try hard enough, the relationship can still be salvaged. Whatever it was, Daniel picked up the phone and called his father. What followed wasn't reconciliation. It was a masterclass in psychological cruelty. Every phone call came with an undertone of contempt. His father would twist conversations until Daniel questioned his own memory of events. He'd manipulate, deflect, and then act wounded if Daniel pushed back. Classic gaslighting, the kind that leaves you apologizing for things you didn't do. Daniel's fiancée sat beside him through many of these calls, and she remembers the physical toll they took. The way his shoulders would tense. The long exhale after he hung up, like he'd just set down something heavy. She asked him more than once, "Why keep doing this to yourself?" And his answer was always some version of the same thing. "There's a legacy company. My grandparents built it. I want that. I've earned that." It wasn't about the money, not entirely. It was about the principle that something rightfully his shouldn't be stolen from him by the same man who'd already stolen his childhood. Then Daniel's grandfather passed away. His father, now the sole surviving adult child, made a decision almost immediately. He placed Daniel's grandmother into a nursing home. Not out of necessity, out of convenience. Daniel and his fiancée went to visit her. What they found sitting in that room wasn't just an elderly woman grieving her husband. It was a woman who hadn't eaten a solid meal in months. Her dentures were missing. Nobody had thought to bring them. Nobody had bothered. She'd been surviving on liquids because the one person responsible for her care couldn't be bothered to make a 5-minute phone call. Daniel's fiancée describes the moment they realized what had happened as one of the angriest she'd ever seen him. Not loud anger. Quiet, controlled, dangerous anger. The kind that settles into your jaw and doesn't leave. They tracked down the dentures themselves. They made sure she had them. It was too little, delivered far too late, but it was something. She passed away not long after. And in her passing, Daniel inherited her portion of the business. His fiancée, watching all of this unfold, asked him again, gently this time, because she could see what it was costing him. "Why not just walk away now? You have some of what you wanted. Isn't this enough?" His response cut deeper than she expected. "I've already put too much into this. I can't walk away now." That's the trap, isn't it? The sunk cost of trying to fix what was broken long before you arrived. Daniel wasn't just fighting for an inheritance anymore. He was fighting to make sense of a lifetime of damage, and quitting felt like letting his father win one final time. DHE turning point. If Daniel thought the hard part was behind him, he was wrong. It was just beginning. It turned out his father hadn't filed taxes, for himself or for his own aging parents. In over 10 years. 10 years of financial silence, buried paperwork, and avoided responsibility, now stacked squarely on Daniel's shoulders. Before he could touch a cent of any inheritance, he had to untangle a full decade of tax filings for 3 separate people. And as he dug through the financial wreckage of the company he'd fought so hard to be part of, a darker picture emerged. The business wasn't just struggling. It was hemorrhaging money. And the source of the bleeding wasn't bad luck or a rough market. It was his father's gambling addiction. 40 years, millions of dollars, casino floors and betting lines quietly devouring a family legacy one reckless bet at a time. Daniel found himself staring down debts so severe that he had to pull from his own savings and take out loans, his own money, his own credit, his own risk, just to keep the business and his father from total collapse. Try to sit with that for a second. A man spends his childhood in poverty because his father wouldn't pay child support. Decades later, that same father has gambled away the family fortune, and the son is the one writing checks to clean it up. His fiancée remembers asking him, disbelieving how he could keep absorbing blow after blow without breaking. And every time, Daniel had an answer. Not an emotional one, a strategic one. She has a background in business, in setting up and managing companies, and she'd throw problems at him just to test him. Cash flow issues, legal exposure, structuring the buyout. Every single time, he came back with a plan. Not just one plan, a first option, a backup, and a third fallback, if that failed too. And somehow, it was always the first plan that worked. This wasn't a man being steamrolled by his circumstances. This was a man methodically, patiently, taking control of a situation designed to destroy him. DHE, plan, takes shape. Slowly, the picture changed. Daniel wasn't just surviving his father's chaos anymore. He was containing it. The business, once a sinking ship, started to stabilize under his management. Debts were being addressed instead of ignored. Legal counsel was brought in. Structure replaced the previous decade of denial. And then came the diagnosis. His father, in the early stages of dementia. It would have been easy for that news to soften everything, to make Daniel abandon his boundaries out of pity. It didn't. Instead, it clarified things. Daniel put a tracking system in place, not out of cruelty, but necessity, so that if his father tried to gamble again, he'd know immediately. He wasn't punishing his father for being sick. He was protecting what was left of the business and himself from a pattern that had never once changed on its own. Through all of it, Daniel kept going to therapy, something he'd started long before his fiancée even entered the picture. He held no illusions about who his father was. He understood, clearly and without bitterness clouding his judgment, that he was dealing with a clinical narcissist who would never care about him the way a father should. That understanding didn't make the pain disappear, but it gave him distance, perspective, control. Which brings us to the flight. Business finally stabilizing, debts finally under control. Daniel decided to do something almost unbelievably generous. He flew his father out to join him and his fiancée on a vacation. His father covered the cost of the flights, an incredible hotel, and half of every meal, including Daniel's very first Michelin-starred dining experience. By every measure, it was a beautiful trip. But Daniel handled the seat bookings. On the way there, his father got a perfectly fine aisle seat. No complaints. Comfortable enough? On the 5-hour flight home? Middle seat. Squeezed between two other passengers, unable to move, unable to escape, for 5 straight hours. His father called afterward, indignant, describing in aggrieved detail how uncomfortable the flight had been, trapped beside a much larger passenger, boxed in with nowhere to go. And Daniel laughed. Not out of malice, out of something closer to release. After years of gaslighting, after months buried in a decade of unfiled taxes, after absorbing gambling debts that weren't his to pay, after finding his own grandmother without her dentures because his father couldn't be bothered. This was, finally, something small, something almost poetic. 5 hours of minor discomfort for a man who had caused 30 years of major discomfort to everyone around him. His fiancée admits she felt a flicker of sympathy watching it unfold. It's hard not to, even for someone like that. But mostly, she says, she just felt joy. Watching Daniel laugh, freely and without guilt, maybe for the first time in this whole exhausting saga. There's no dramatic courtroom scene here, no explosive confrontation, just a middle seat, small, almost silly, and somehow entirely fitting. Sometimes justice doesn't arrive as a grand reckoning. Sometimes it's just a son, finally in control of his own life, choosing not to give an inch more than necessary to the man who never gave him anything at all. Daniel didn't get revenge in the traditional sense. He got something better. Control. Boundaries. A business turned around through his own competence, not his father's guidance. And on top of all that, a story he can laugh about, instead of one that still makes him flinch. If this story hit you somewhere, hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories of quiet justice and hard-earned peace. And tell us in the comments, what's the smallest, most satisfying form of payback you've ever witnessed? Sometimes it really is the little things. We'll see you in the next one.